So, right, stage 3, we kind of left off on, well, that was a episode went in a lot of weird directions, but
yeah, it's fun
as they usually do. That's part of it, right?
Yeah,
a little bit of structure, a little bit of
chaos.
Yeah, good bit of chaos in that last one. We're at stage 4, moving on from scaling into
succeeding.
That sounds a little bit more fun than scaling.
I don't know. I love scaling it. Well, it gets back to like what we talked about before, right? It's none of this is that complicated, but it's just hard, right? And so in the succeeding game, right, you know, you're confident that you're building something that really has a very strong shot of becoming an enduring, you know, a great enduring company, which, you know, we define as a company where you can pass the leadership mantle to another owner. Someone's gladly buy the business from you, or to the next visionary. And that's a very big thing, right? Is getting to the point where you've got the company so well defined in terms of what I like to talk about is the forever agreements. They're worth fighting over and defending, right? The forever agreements. So your compelling why, your compelling value proposition, the culture is strong now, right? And who you serve, right? Your ICP is very clear. So you're very clear about these 4 things. And you can go find someone else who's like, look, I love who you are and where you're going, right? And I will honor those agreements. And I can see how to honor those agreements. And I can see, you know, the next 5 to 10 years, you know, you are at the cusp of being, that's stage 5 is when you have all that locked in and you've got this great organization that's consistently hitting, you know, your short, your medium, and your long-term goals. And that stage 4 is where you're getting to the place where as a visionary, you're still needed, right? Because you're still doing that 5 to 10 year thing, but you've got some great people around you who are helping you with the 2 to 5, and you feel, I would like to see it where you feel highly confident that within that great group of people that you're surrounding yourself with, there are 1 or more candidates who deeply understand who the company is, where it's going, why it does the thing that it's doing, is excited about the future, and has a vision for where the company can be in 5 to 10 years. And so in stage 4, right, you're nurturing, you're developing those people, you're having success. That's why you can do this stuff, right? And you as the founder are getting to the point where you can stop being involved in, you know, the quarterlies and the annuals, and you're really about representing the brand. You're really about the company's future, and you're building and nurturing 1 or more potential successors.
Which is a lot harder to do in practice than it is in theory.
Just like everything else, it's relatively straightforward. It's not that complicated, but it is hard, right?
Yeah, and it's not as straight. I think a lot of people, right, they'll have the idea of what the thing is in their head, right? But being able to communicate that in a way that is so effective that it gets cascaded effectively.
Yeah,
it's one of those things where you see a lot of companies struggle with growth,
right?
And they start to grow, and then it becomes a lot harder to retain that soul and make sure everyone's really clear on those forever agreements.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you just get so big that you kind of lose it, because it's just like, it was hard. And then I think there's a certain escape velocity of growth without having done that work ahead of time. So you see a lot of, it seems like it's around 100 people, fast growing.
Dunbar 150 is your classic number, right?
Yeah. But I mean, where it starts just like, I think if you go from 100, this is just complete guess, right?
Right.
Intuition. But if you go from 100 to 150,
yeah,
and you get from A to B and you get to 150, then you're gonna start to feel at 100. But you get to 150 and you don't have it sorted,
right?
It's gonna be a huge uphill battle to get it addressed.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, there's so much to go.
So I just opened it up here.
Yeah, there's so many rabbit holes go down here, right? Which is fun. So in no particular order, it's relatively well known that there's a glass ceiling at 10 million in revenue, right? I don't like the glass ceiling right? That's so used in so many different ways. It's probably not the best phrasing, but it's true. It's hard to break through the 10 million in revenue. A lot of companies hit that, and they haven't done all the hard work that needs to be done in order to have the velocity to break through that ceiling, that 10 million ceiling, the momentum. Yeah. And, you know, and it falls across so many different dimensions. It's, I think, it could be the forever agreements. It could be just, making sure that, that they have a unique enough position, a strong enough point of view to attract and retain the kind of talent that you need to step through stage 4 and into stage 5 and beyond. Because as we've talked about before, I've stolen it from the co-founder of Infusionsoft, which is now called Keep. The nature of leadership changes on the ones and the threes: 100,000, 300,000, 1 million, 3 million, 10 million, 30 million, 100 million. And, we knew that we had to transition to a stage 5 structure, which is, I'm at the visionary level. We got C-suite members at stratum 4 and department heads at stratum 3 and team leaders, obviously, in departments, stratum 2, and then individual contributors at stratum 1. We knew that the $30 to $100 million run was going to require us to take that next step. And that next step was hard because you have all these people who've helped you get to stage 4. And, we had a couple that were capable of stepping up into that next tier of leadership, right? The C-suite. And then the rest of everybody else was like, they're great people, but they don't have what it takes for us they don't have what it takes to be one of the C-suite members at that moment in their career, at that moment in their development, given everything that was going on. And so I think, my instincts are, and it'd be great to do research on this, we say that a lot here, right? But my instincts are that you've got to commit to that moment, right? You got to say, I am going to now go and develop a C-suite. I am now going to go hire the people that I need to hire that have the ability to really own a bunch of different departments and own them executing against a 2 to 5 year plan, who've been there, who've done that. Those people are more expensive, obviously, than they cost you more. In our case, they cost more money. They cost more. They have higher salaries, and they require, right? They deservedly so get more equity in the company. And so, you basically have to decide: are you going to do this? And for us, when we were going from stage 4 to stage 5. One of the things, I think I've talked about this before, that I worried about a lot was our culture, right? I worried about, you love all the people that have gotten you there, all the department leaders. I had 11 of them reporting to me. And by the way, that was the second time we'd stepped up, right? So the first time we stepped up, there were several people who were on the senior leadership team who did not make it to the next level, and they didn't like it. And specifically, one stayed and one left is an example in that moment. Interestingly, when we did the C-suite move, right, everyone stayed, but we did lose 2 within the first 6 months of the transition to the C-suite, from the department heads. And so, and change is hard, and you worry that culturally, even though the culture, we didn't change anything, right? Our core values didn't change. I don't think the things that we emphasized changed, but but the way the leaders run and lead, what they lean into, our CTPO is very different than our old head of engineering, as an example. He's very different than our old head of product, as an example. And both of those folks who we loved are no longer with us. So, it's just, there's a lot of change there. And it's not just change for me. I have different leaders now, but it's change for the people below those new leaders. And it's hard. And so, I can appreciate why a lot of people choose not to do this, right? But once you decide that you're going to stay at, let's say, say, you decide that you're going to stay at Stratum 4, you're going to stay a Stratum 4 leader, and you're going to surround yourself with Stratum 3 department heads, and that's who you are. The probability that you're building something that, if you're a Stratum 5 leader overseeing Stratum 3 leaders, there's going to be tension because, you're here, they're there, and, you're stretching down to really connect with them, and they're stretching up to connect with you. And it's hard for you to be well aligned. I get impatient and it's not fair to them, but it's kind of not fair to me too. So I'm being unfair to them, unfair to me, given where we wanted to go, given our vision at that moment in time. So, I can appreciate why it's easy to stay at stage 4. I think some stage 4 businesses are very sellable because someone sees value there and they're going to bring it into their organization, and they don't need sort of a stage 5, right? So they're buying it to bring it in, or they're buying it because now we know how to take it to stage 5, right? So they see the opportunity that's there. But, it's not optimized for that next transition of visionary.
Yeah, because there's something to be said about, right, if you just stay at stage 4 and you're really mastering that whole thing and creating a whole package around that's very sellable versus trying to just optimize for growth.
Right.
But going back to having that momentum to really break through and move from stage 4 to stage 5.
Yeah.
What does that effective window look like, right? At the beginning of the window, from when you're like, okay, we got to start planning for stage 5,
right?
Making these adjustments, making these decisions, having these hard conversations.
Yeah.
To, hey, you're really running out of time here, right? Stuff's going to start to plateau.
Right.
Right. What does that window look like? What does it feel like?
Yeah. So in terms of the humans?
In terms of humans, especially from a leadership perspective.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're CEO visionary in this situation, like what are you going to be seeing? What are your challenges you're going to be facing? Yeah.
Well, the simplest way to look at it always is going back to the time spans of responsibility, right? The time span of responsibilities for Stratum 3 is 1 to 2 years, right? So you have objectives that are 1 to 2 years out, and those objectives obviously align with all the rest of the objectives of the organization's bigger goals, right? And so obviously everybody needs to be, product and marketing and engineering and data, and everybody sort of has to be, working on those 1 to 2 years and doing it well. And there's a lot of confidence in one another, right? But then, what can happen is, and what we experienced is, you start to see that even though everybody's working well, the outputs aren't where they need to be, right? You end up with, like, we have our own stories here, right? But you end up with mistakes that are not inconsequential, right? So one of our mistakes that was not inconsequential was the transition from Stripe to Paddle, and ended up costing us a lot of pain and misery because we didn't do a very good job of really making sure that 3 different parts of the organization all really understood what it took, what it was going to take. It's probably more than that, right? Because you think about it from the perspective of client success, product, engineering,
marketing,
finance.
From a product marketing standpoint?
I maybe, right? But certainly customer success, product, engineering, and finance, there was a breakdown there, right? And you could say that's my fault, right? That I didn't make sure that everybody had walked through everything. And so you could say, well, that's why you could say, well, one thing to do is, instead of having a C-suite, you needed to have a chief operating officer or an integrator, as the EOS would say, right? That really made sure everybody had really thought through everything, and that the reasons we were doing this made sense, and that we were all confident that when it was done, it would be done well, and we would be serving, our customers well throughout the process. And it didn't work. And you could say to me, well, why didn't you get an integrator at that stage? Well, the reason I didn't get an integrator is I knew that the speed, right, that we were growing, that I would eventually need a C-suite. And so the idea of getting an integrator in there for 1 or 2 years max, didn't make sense to me, right? And so we were in that transition between stage 4 and stage 5, where we had the gaps clearly exploited, for lack of a better term, right? We were exposed. And it ended up, I would tell you, that ended up from an enterprise value perspective and a revenue growth perspective. I mean, it cost us millions and millions of dollars. Now, ultimately you can say, well, yeah, but it's not like you've lost them forever. But when you're in the game of fast growth, and ultimately, you're either going to need, you're either going to take the company public, or you're going to sell it, or you're going to raise additional capital. If the business is worth, let's just say for the sake of a stupid conversation, if the business is worth $20, right? And if you had done it well, it would have been worth $30, and you go out and you sell 10% of the company. Well, you're selling, instead of selling 10%, you're selling 15 or 12 or 13%. So it does genuinely cost you, right? And so, that was a classic example of where, we experienced the transition from 4 to 5, the exposure of being in that 4 to 5 spot.
Yeah, and I think the product marketing thing was about all the people that have to deal with the consequences of it, right? It's not just the money thing. It's like, okay, all these people have other jobs, right? Have things that are really normally prioritized, but in this situation, in this chaos, it's like, oh, you're getting redirected to doing something else.
Yeah, it's a fair point, because you could say, it's an interesting way of looking at it, and you always bring interesting ways of looking at these things, but you're right. If you think about product marketing as not being just around communicating what's new about the product, but what's messed up a little bit about the product, right? Because what happened is we had a bunch of billing issues, right? And so now, and because we're predominantly a PLG company, right? We don't have, a horde, because we're all small and mid-sized businesses. We can't afford every single one of our customers to have their own customer service person, right? So how do we communicate? We communicate by email, right? And who owns that? Product marketing or marketing, but, or you could say customer service owned it, but there's no question that some part of our organization, whether it's product marketing or customer service, got hard hit by that.
And that's not part of the normal roles and responsibilities in terms of that as a specific activity.
Right.
And I think the biggest thing, right, sum up you're losing time, you're losing money, and you're losing resources as people to go deal with these things. And you could say, oh, but you're basically just setting yourself back X amount of time.
Right.
But the big thing is that no matter where you're at time-wise or in a moment, is you're basically removing options from the table, right? You had these options, and one of the big things with anything is preservation of options. You make sure you have as many avenues to go down as possible. But when you make a mistake like that, yes, you're still in the game, but it shuts a lot of doors.
It did shut a lot of doors, right? I mean, it set back our product development. Globally, I would argue at least 6, if not 12 months. Yeah. And that was the second time. It's big, right? When you're growing, I don't brag, right? But when you're growing, whatever, 50 to 100%, right? Growth rates, that's big.
Well, it obviously depends on the industry, right? It's like 6 months could be like, you take Formula One, for example, you lose 6 months, like, oh, okay, well, that's just it. You're done.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right. And so you see examples of those issues pop up, and it's interesting to see different types of people comment on those things.
Yeah.
Because some people understand, like, well, that's what you got to do if you want to succeed in the future. And so they're like, well, you don't really have a future if you keep doing it this way. And
yeah.
Yeah. But when you're in that situation, you don't have a choice. Right. We'd love for things to have gone differently. We'd love to have the choice to focus on something else right now, but you don't. You have a fire that you got to put out.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I think we're hoping to do with sharing all this with people is, just you need to understand what stage you're in and what stage you're going into next, and what are the implications, right? Am I ready for going into that next stage, or am I not, right? Do I have structural issues? Do I have people issues? Do I have leadership issues? Do I have product issues? Do I have marketing issues, right? Where am I like, I'm confident, I'm strong, and where am I, right? I'm exposed here. And then what's the risk associated with the exposure? Is it, if you would have told me that obviously we completely underestimated the risk associated with the transition from Stripe to Paddle.
Right. You need to understand the whole game you're playing. Are you ready and are you not?
Yeah.
I think, there's a bunch of analogies you could go with, but in all of those, your hand is sort of being held like you're playing a video game and you got to go to these levels. And right once you get one, you go to the next. And it's like, okay, well, you making it to the next level means you're ready for that level.
Right.
Right. Or you go to college and it's like, okay, you went through these classes.
Yeah.
And there's a whole system to make sure that you go through each thing accordingly.
Right.
And they're not going to let you just fall through. And if you screw up, like that's entirely on you kind of thing.
Yeah.
But this is, no, you are responsible for everything. Right. You can kind of cut some shortcuts,
right?
Shortcuts here and there, but you got to stay super disciplined and be aware of everything that's going around, what you've done in the past, right? If you skipped over anything, you got to make sure that's good. Right. And then you got to make sure that you are ready to move from stage 4 to stage 5. And in your example, right, you're like, I'm going to take on the burden, right? Because for you, you're going to take on pretty much all the burden of not having the integrator.
Right.
And that was a sacrifice that you made.
Yeah.
Right. That wasn't like, oh, I just, whatever. It's like, no, it's going to be a really tough 2 years basically.
Yeah.
To get from here to there.
Yeah.
But right, you're weighing your options, like this is probably the best way to do it.
Yeah. And just to state, I shouldn't say state the obvious, but to share, right? There was disagreement in the senior leadership team in terms of whether we should go out and get an integrator, right? Because I am not the perfect integrator. But I explained why I thought that was the wrong thing to do. One could say, well, what about a fractional integrator? And my answer would be no, because, what we're trying to do is complex, and I have strong opinions about what we need to do and what's important for right now and where we're going, and to bring someone on board, and then in theory to give them as much accountability as your classic integrator would want. I'm like, no, right? Not this is not going to be a long enough game for that. And then you could say, well, what happens if you bring on an integrator who ultimately can end up just being one of your C-suite members? Well, it's interesting, right? Conversation. And we had it, of course, but, I think to be a really, really good integrator, you need to have a lot of experience with all of the facets associated with all the different departments and all the facets associated with running a business. By the way, I have a stronger opinion on this than I think some do. But, if that's the case, they're not going to want to step backwards and go into, running, marketing as an example, or being the CMO or being the chief revenue officer, right? And then certainly, finding an integrator who would be a great CTPO and then, shoot them back to being CTPO. It just didn't seem like it was the right set of options to explore, in my opinion. So paid for it.
Well, with that type of individual, it's kind of hard to do this for 2 years and then re-specialize into something.
Yeah, especially nowadays with every single one of those areas sort of evolving as fast as they're evolving. Yeah.
Because you have to go out and get someone who was a CTO, and then they're like, oh, you want to be temporarily COO, but you're going to go back to, it's like, that doesn't, it's not an ideal situation.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's probably harder to, right, like you said, I think it's probably harder to do that these days than it was historically.
Yeah. Just because of the rate of change.
Especially in a fast growing and larger organization, it's hard to do that, right? Because you can kind of step in a smaller thing. And I think, I could be completely wrong here, but I think Chris Snyder did something like that before.
Right.
Where he moved and he was like, oh, we got that role. And he's like, wasn't for me. And did other things. Go watch his origin story podcast. But yeah. Let's kind of wrap everything up here.
Should we talk about like what it looks like to be solidly in stage 4? Or
that's me the question.
Yeah.
So what does it look like to be solidly in stage 4?
Right. So I would say you are very confident about your 2 to 5 year focus, right? This is what we're all about. This is what we're focused on. And so you've got a lot of confidence. Confidence without competence is dangerous. So then we move into the competency level. So we're confident this is where we want to be. Now the competence is we have really strong leaders across our departments, right? Who can handle the objectives, the 1 to 2 year objectives. Hopefully they're pretty closer to 2 year objectives than the 1 year objectives. So they're strong there. You've now got specialists, right? So you've got a really good head of marketing, you got really good head of creative, if that's the thing. You have a really good head of data, a really good head of product, you got a really good head of engineering, you got a really good head of finance. So you've got really good sort of core function leaders. You've properly layered the organization so that everybody understands sort of what it takes to succeed at stratum 1, at stratum 2, at stratum 3. And so that's all strong. You're still involved as a founder, right? Because you're there, you're getting the organization to move to the place where you can really be focusing all of your time on the 5 to 10. But the reality is you're still, you're in the 2 to 5, right? That's where you're spending the majority of your time. You've got lots of thoughts on the 5 to 10, but it can't take a lot of time, right? And then, at this point in time, you should be able to raise debt for sure. And you should be able to raise equity. But, part of the reason you can raise equity is because you're now saying, hey, we're going to raise equity to help our organization go from stage 4 to stage 5, right? And so, as the founder, things are working really pretty well around you, and they're strong enough for you to be able to now move toward, right, stage 5, which is what we talked about that we did, right? So you're moving towards that stage 5, and you're willing to take the risks associated with the culture strong enough to tolerate bringing on a new level of senior leadership or promoting several people across the organization. So you're confident and competent enough about where you are so that you can move towards the next step, which is now, right, going out and either doing the chief operating officer / integrator thing or doing the C-suite thing. Does that make sense?
That does.
Cool.
It's a good way to wrap it.
All right.
And yes, the brief and guide will be in the description below.
Bueno.
Thank you.